On the 20th of January 2026, Air Force One took a fast U-turn on its way to Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum. But why the sudden U-turn? From a standpoint of truth, there is no jet in the United States of America called the Air Force One. But any jet that harbors a sitting president tuned to the radio station called Air Force One automatically becomes the Air Force One. If the President of the United States of America sits on an helicopter that is being tuned to the radio station Air Force One, automatically becomes Marine One. When the President sits on a fighter jet tuned to the radio signal Air Force One, automatically becomes Army One. So the Air Force One is actually a radio sign and not a jet.
Tuesday night, President Donald Trump departed Washington aboard Air Force One, headed for the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
President Donald Trump's trip to Switzerland began with uncertainty. As he told reporters, he had no idea what's going to happen just moments before departing the White House for the World Economic Forum in Davos.
I'm going to Davos. I believe it'll be very successful, the trip. The country's never done better. We have $18 trillion plus coming in. We've never had anything like it, and no country has had anything like it. Prices are way down. Gasoline now is $1.99 in a lot of places. And frankly, nobody's seen anything like this. So it's really good, but this will be an interesting trip. I have no idea what's going to happen, but you are well represented. Thank you very much.
Trump has raised his high brand towards the Iranian president on the electrical fault that transpired on the Air Force One.
And it happens hours after Donald Trump threatens to wipe Iran off the face of the earth. Coincidence or something more?
What could be the cause of the electrical glitch? Though it is not yet fathomed, but it is of high risk to continue on that journey as a result of the turn off of the light indicator, so the plane have to turn quick for the fear of chain reaction.
We have just learned that Air Force One is turning around and returning to Joint Base Andrews just a couple of minutes after taking off from Davos, Switzerland. President Trump was scheduled to meet with world leaders at the World Economic Forum. We're going to bring in CNN's senior White House correspondent, Kristen Holmes. Kristen, what do we know about what's happening here?
So we have been told by a a source that was familiar with what is going on that Air Force One did turn around moments ago. It is on its way back to Joint Air Force Base Andrews, and this is because of what they are calling a small mechanical issue. They're saying that it is not serious, but that they needed to return back, and that President Trump is still going to go to Davos, but he will be taking a backup plane. So likely what we're going to see is an entire deplaning of the president and his team and getting up on one of these backup support planes that is waiting right now currently at Andrews Air Force Base. And one thing to keep in mind, there is a pool traveling with him of reporters. But one of the complications on Air Force One, of course, is that there is no internet for those reporters once they are airborne. So we will have likely a readout from those pool reporters as to what exactly was going on aboard Air Force One during this time. But what we know right now is that that plane did make essentially a U-turn after leaving and is on its way back to Andrews Air Force Base in order to have the president swap planes. Again, this is expected that he will still be going to Davos. He will still be giving his speech, and meeting with those world leaders. But again, obviously things will be slightly delayed given what's occurred today.
Can you tell us, from your great experience in this field, what do you think would cause the crew here to decide that it was worth just turning the plane back, something that would appear as they were en route to Davos that would cause them to then decide to go back?
Well, even though there's a great number of redundancies in Air Force One, there are some things, of course, that you can't overlook. For example, if they had control surface issues, if there were anything on the controls where they had any kind of problem at all controlling the, nose up, nose down, ailerons turning, any kind of control surface issue might require them to turn around and go back. And then there are some warnings that you simply, you can't ignore. If you get certain warnings on, on the engines, if you have any kind of indication that there's any kind of problem with the fuel, that's highly unlikely. But, the Air Force One, when I was Inspector General, we actually had an issue where we had to get some bogus parts off of Air Force One. And, it is an aircraft, and there are warnings on that 747 that cannot be ignored. But, this has to be one of the most, best maintained planes in the world. But there are things on every aircraft where when that warning light comes on, you have to seek, you have to turn around and go back and address it. So it's possible if they had any kinds of warnings like that, despite the great number of redundancies, there are some things that do require you to return to the airport as soon as possible.
Yeah. And, these things do happen. I've seen it happen many a time. So even on the most watched plane in the entire world. And we're going to bring back in Kristen Holmes, because my understanding, Kristen, is that you have some new information. Kristen, what are you learning?
Yeah, so we finally got that pool note that we were talking about from the reporters on the plane, and also we've seen that now they've posted it to their rapid response page. But essentially what it says in the pool note here is it says an urgent update. After takeoff, the crew of Air Force One identified a, quote, minor electrical issue, and out of an abundance of caution, we are turning around, landing at Joint Base Andrews, and boarding a new aircraft. And that came from the press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, to the pool. They did note, this was a note from the pooler to the entire pool, that the lights in the press cabin went out briefly after takeoff, but no explanation was offered. Again, as we've discussed, this is going to delay their arrival. But one question I can now answer for you, Abby, is that they are expected to land back at Andrews in about 7 minutes at 11 p.m. And then again, they'll have to deplane, get the bags off the plane, reboard, and then they'll be on their way to Zurich.
Kristen, thank you for that. I'm going to bring Mary back in, because Mary, I'm curious, when you hear minor electrical issue, what brings, and also that detail about the lights going out in the press cabin at the back of the plane, what does that bring to your mind?
Well, any kind of electrical issue can be of tremendous concern because, again, while lots of, all the equipment to the extent possible has backups, in some cases there's not just one backup, but two or three backups. If you're having an electrical issue on the plane, it can affect so many different parts of the plane, so many different circuits, so many different things, that truly what the message says from the plane, out of an abundance of caution, they really have to do that, because the last thing, one of the things that's very difficult to survive when you're halfway across the ocean is if you have an electrical problem, any kind of electrical failure, an electrical, fire, that is something that literally overrides everything else.
Why the plane turned? The plane have to turn because of the fear of chain reaction and of the unknown, such as all components working together systematically, leaning on each other to function properly. The default of one might lead to another in a short or long while. The plane turned on its early entry into the ocean, and another plane was boarded for the journey.
Delayed his arrival in Switzerland.
Air Force One, do you need any assistance?
The legendary plane was forced to turn back less than an hour into the flight because of an electrical issue. A flight tracking website shows the plane doing an about turn off the coast of Long Island and returning to Andrews Air Force Base. One reporter on board noted that the lights in the press cabin went out briefly after takeoff, but no explanation was offered. We asked pilot Dr. Bob Arnott just how serious was the problem.
Anytime you have a flickering light or a light that goes off, it could be nothing, but it also could be the beginning of a chain of events that leads to an electrical fire.
The plane used for Air Force One is 40 years old. Fortunately, there was a backup that also happens to be 40 years old that was used to fly the president and his entourage onto Switzerland.
Last year, Qatar gifted Trump a luxury 747-8 to be converted into Air Force One, a move that sparked massive ethical, constitutional, and security concerns. That jet is still being retrofitted. For now, Trump flies on aircraft built during the Cold War. So was this just a routine precaution or a chilling coincidence at a dangerous moment in global politics? With threats flying, protests raging, and tensions rising with Iran, one thing is certain: even Air Force One isn't immune to uncertainty.
President Donald J. Trump, on his arrival on Davos, Switzerland, gave a speech at the World Economic Forum on the reason to acquire Greenland, which he mistakenly mentioned Iceland for Greenland, stating that he will not use force as expected of him for the acquiring of Greenland, which has been on a demand for close to 2 centuries.
Ultimately, these are matters of national security, and perhaps no current issue makes the situation more clear than what's currently going on with Greenland. Would you like me to say a few words of Greenland? I was going to leave it out of the speech, but I think I would have been reviewed very negatively. I have tremendous respect for both the people of Greenland and the people of Denmark, tremendous respect. But every NATO ally has an obligation to be able to defend their own territory. And the fact is, no nation or group of nations is in any position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States. We're a great power, much greater than people even understand. I think they found that out 2 weeks ago in Venezuela. We saw this in World War II when Denmark fell to Germany after just 6 hours of fighting and was totally unable to defend either itself or Greenland. So the United States was then compelled, we did it, we felt an obligation to do it, to send our own forces to hold the Greenland territory. And hold it we did, at great cost and expense. They didn't have a chance of getting on it, and they tried. Denmark knows that. We literally set up bases on Greenland for Denmark. We fought for Denmark. We weren't fighting for anyone else. We were fighting to save it for Denmark. Big, beautiful piece of ice. It's hard to call it land. It's a big piece of ice. But we saved Greenland and successfully prevented our enemies from gaining a foothold in our hemisphere. So we did it for ourselves also. And then after the war, which we won it big. Without us, right now you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps. After the war, we gave Greenland back to Denmark. How stupid were we to do that? But we did it. But we gave it back. But how ungrateful are they now? So now our country and the world face much greater risks than it did ever before because of missiles, because of nuclear, because of weapons of warfare that I can't even talk about. 2 weeks ago, they saw weapons that nobody ever heard of. They weren't able to fire one shot at us. They said, what happened? Everything was discombobulated. They said, we've got them in our sights. Press the trigger, and nothing happened. No anti-aircraft missiles went up. There was one that went up about 30 feet and crashed down right next to the people that sent it. They said, what the hell is going on? Those defensive systems were made by Russia and by China. So they're going to go back to the drawing boards, I guess. Greenland is a vast, almost entirely uninhabited and undeveloped territory that's sitting undefended in a key strategic location between the United States, Russia, and China. That's exactly where it is, right smack in the middle. Wasn't important nearly when we gave it back. You know, when we gave it back, it wasn't the same as it is now. It's not important for any other reason, you know, everyone talks about the minerals. There's so many places. There's no rare earth, no such thing as rare earth. There's rare processing, but there's so much rare earth. And to get to this rare earth, you got to go through hundreds of feet of ice. That's not the reason we need it. We need it for strategic national security and international security. This enormous unsecured island is actually part of North America, on the northern frontier of the Western Hemisphere. That's our territory. It is therefore a core national security interest of the United States of America. And in fact, it's been our policy for hundreds of years to prevent outside threats from entering our hemisphere, and we've done it very successfully. We've never been stronger than we are now. That's why American presidents have sought to purchase Greenland for nearly 2 centuries. You know, for 2 centuries they've been trying to do it. They should have kept it after World War II, but they had a different president. That's all right. People think differently. Much more necessary now than it was at that time, however. In 2019, Denmark said that they would spend over $200 million to strengthen Greenland's defenses. But as you know, they spent less than 1% of that amount. 1%. There's no sign of Denmark there. And I say that with great respect for Denmark, whose people I love, whose leaders are very good. It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States, just as we have acquired many other territories throughout our history, as many of the European nations have. They've acquired, there's nothing wrong with it. Many of them, some went in reverse, actually, if you look. Some had great, vast wealth, great vast lands all over the world. They went in reverse. They're stuck back where they started. That happens too. But some grow. But this would not be a threat to NATO. This would greatly enhance the security of the entire alliance, the NATO alliance. The United States is treated very unfairly by NATO. I want to tell you that. And when you think about it, nobody can dispute it. We give so much and we get so little in return. Until I came along, NATO was only supposed to pay 2% of GDP, but they weren't paying. Most of the countries weren't paying anything. The United States was paying for virtually 100% of NATO. And I got that stopped. I said, that's not fair. But then more importantly, I got NATO to pay 5%, and now they were paying, and now they are paying. So something nobody said was possible. They said, we will never go up higher than 2%. But they went to 5%, and now they're paying the 5. They didn't pay the 2, and now they're paying the 5. And they're stronger for it, and they have an excellent, by the way, Secretary General, who's possibly in the room. Mark, are you here? Yes, he's here. Hello, Mark. We never asked for anything, and we never got anything. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay, now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. We were a powerful force then, but we are a much more powerful force now.
He reached a deal with Europe following intense negotiations at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland.
It's a deal that people jumped at. Really fantastic for the USA. Gets everything we wanted, including especially real national security.
But jet lag may be getting the best of Trump. He repeatedly confused Greenland for Iceland, an entirely different Arctic nation.
Iceland's already cost us a lot of money.
After the speech, he was swarmed by reporters with a barrage of tough questions.
Are you willing to fight against European? Why are you disrespecting Mr. President?
Trump seemed in good spirits despite the drama with Air Force One for what sounds like a deal that ends the battle for Greenland.
It gets us everything we needed to get. It's a deal that everybody's very happy with.